I am joined today by Brandon Archer, a former coworker and a dear friend of mine. Brandon played professional football in the NFL for the Indianapolis Colts, the Denver Broncos, as well as for the Rhinos Milano in the Italian Football League. After retiring from football, Brandon switched gears and joined a long sales career, largely with a focus on IT solutions before joining Kasota Stone, where he's currently the director of sales and marketing. Brandon, thank you so much for being my friend and for joining me today on Cupalo Conversations.
It's been a pleasure. It's been awesome to be your friend and hang out and have great conversations because we have a lot of them. So
Good. Well, hopefully today is no different.
yes, we'll have some fun today.
Awesome. Well, I would love to talk to you about life after football. So before we get into the after, would you mind telling me your origin story? How did you get into the sport? How did you fall in love?
Yeah. So football was one of those things for me that was, my mom and dad put me in football at a young age. I actually quit my first year of playing football. It was too rough for me. So I actually quit. And then my mom and dad said, hey, no, you can't quit. You got to go back. So the next year, I think it was like fourth grade, I came back and then just kind of fell in love with it. I was somewhat good at it, I guess. I think more than anything, my mom and dad taught me good work ethic. And so I had a big brother too that played football, and I saw that work ethic, and hey, if you work hard, you can get good at something. And so that was one of those things. Football was one of those things for me that was just like, all right, keep going, work hard, you'll get better. And not until, probably middle school where it was like, okay, this could be something. And I'll never forget my high school, which was a private high school here in Minnesota. They had like a dinner or kind of a little banquet for the football team that I was a part of, and they were kind of recruiting us essentially. They were promoting the school, and so that's kind of when I realized, man, this could be something fun. And so I ended up going to that school, playing 4 years, and got a full scholarship to Kansas State University. So, and then, going through college football, it's like, wow, now you see the magnitude of football and what it can really be. So there's some key moments that I remember, like my very first football game in college, walking out, we were playing University of Southern California, USC. And I'll never forget that feeling, walking out to a 50, 60,000 stadium and crowd just going nuts and just walking out. And I wasn't even playing. I was just a freshman, red shirt. And I just was blown away. I was like, wow, this is crazy. And I'd seen some of this stuff with my brother, but, having that personal experience, because my older brother played collegiate and professional football as well. So anyways, fast forward through college. I mean, there was a lot of great stories, good experiences, but that was one of the key ones, just that first year. And then kind of fast forward, I played 3 years. I was a two-time captain in college. So really kind of got thrusted into the leadership role. I was a captain in high school as well, but really, seeing some of those leadership roles and doing those things in college is really when that kind of hit me like, oh man, this is important to be a leader. And there's a lot of weight that comes and responsibility that comes with being a leader. So, so then not until my senior year, it dawned on me like, man, I could potentially have a career and go beyond college. It transitioned into my senior year. I did stay to finish up my college degree, which I'm on the fence about whether that was a good thing or not. But regardless, I ended up getting picked up as a free agent. I was undrafted with the Indianapolis Colts, and that started my career in the NFL. So sorry, that was kind of a long-winded story, but
It's a great story. No, and it leads into beautifully my next question. So, what were some of the proudest moments for you, the biggest accomplishments, either from playing with Kansas State, which, by the way, when I Googled you, I had never seen the videos of you playing, and the sound of the crowd when you got a touchdown, I got chills because I'm not a fan,
sure.
not of you. I'm a fan of you. I'm not a fan of sports, as you know. I don't watch them, but I actually watched this and I thought, holy shit, I know this guy. And I was like, I had goosebumps. But back to my question, I would love to know, what are some of the proudest moments for you? What are some of your career highlights?
Right. So like I said, I had an older brother, Phil Archer, who played collegiate at the University of Minnesota. So I had some big footsteps to fill, and I would say one of the biggest ones, proudest moments. I had my first. I was a linebacker, and I was on the defense, and so I had my first interception, and it was a touchdown. Ran it back for a touchdown, and this was against Oklahoma, who at the time was like one of the best teams in the country. And Adrian Peterson, who was a all-star running back, played a long time in the NFL, was one of their key running backs at that time. And so my brother, I think he might have been playing in NFL Europe at the time, or maybe just finishing up his collegiate career. I can't remember, either transitioned or not. But he called me after that game, and he's like, "Brother, oh my gosh, I just saw you on ESPN. You had the din highlight." And I just remember him being so excited for me. And that was like a big moment, like, wow, that's awesome. Big brother, gave me props for having the highlight on ESPN. So that was cool one. Obviously, being elected a captain, two-time captain for Kansas State University, that was huge. I had two great coaches, Bill Snyder, primary coach there at KSU, Ron Prince, my senior year. So when you have those people to fight for, great leaders like that, it's pretty cool to have the responsibility of being a leader on the team, not only of your peers, but just for the organization as a whole. So I thought that was pretty cool mark in my career. And then obviously, playing your first game in the NFL, I'll never forget that game. So that was always a wake up call. I was a small linebacker in the NFL, believe it or not, at 230. And our first game was against Dallas Cowboys. And I can't remember if it might have been in their old stadium, but regardless, they're a huge team. They're known for really big guys. And I remember my very first play, kickoff return, which is one of the worst positions and teams in football. And I had to hit this guy, probably ran just as fast as I did. And he was 285 pounds. And I had to hit this guy. I just remember getting completely killed by this guy. So, but no, it was fun. Yeah, in the NFL, it was certainly a wake-up call for me. Obviously, it's you transition into this great sport, and then there's the business component that goes to it. And so that was kind of a wake-up call because I signed 9 contracts my rookie year. So it was kind of up, down, all around. You didn't know where you're going to go. But yeah, and it kind of made football not as fun. But no. So getting back to your question, those are some of the key highlights I think in my career that are big ones that I'm proud of.
Outside of regular nerves before stepping into the arena, did you ever get scared of being hurt?
Not really. I think you there's so much practice in the game of football or any sport for that matter. And so you have this repetition of it's ingrained, right? And the visual foresight and visual training and all of those things that kind of come into play. So obviously there's injuries you're going to have. But no, going into the game, I don't think there was ever a fear of, hey, I'm going to get hurt. So
even when you were facing that 280-pound monster?
No, absolutely not. The game of football it's all about being tough and, kicking your opponent's ass. So, you got to go out there and do that. So there's that part of being like a warrior out there and trying to devastate and kill your opponent. I mean, that's literally the mindset that you have. And on the defense, probably more so, I would say. But offensive guys can get just as aggressive. But yeah, so I mean, there's not a lot of fear in getting hurt.
That's amazing. Well, I am curious. You've talked about these transitions, and speaking of the big transition, I am really curious. What was it like leaving the NFL, leaving professional football? Does the Players Association or the league provide you with a lot of hand-holding through that transition or support into the real world?
Yeah, well, I guess to answer your question of the first part of it, the transition, yeah, it's interesting because I went through college and I always kind of went through my football career as football doesn't define me, right? So I always have this kind of like this proud notion that it was a part of my life, but it wasn't like who defined me. But not until I left the sport when it's like, man, it was a huge part of my life. And there was a lot of definement in playing football. I was the football player, right? As much as I wanted to say I wasn't, and it wasn't as part of me, it certainly was. And I still find myself wearing my NFL alumni hat, and there's a little bit of ego in that, right? But no, there's something to be proud of, obviously, but it does challenge one to transition because it is such a big part of your life, and it's a drastic change. So not only just because you did it for so long, but because of the extremes, right? You're going from entertainment value, everyone knows you, it's a huge deal, right? To a 9 to 5 in the real world. And it's like, oh man, this is completely different. Obviously the pay gap difference there. So there's a lot of change. So my experience certainly had some ups and downs, that's for sure. And we can get into more details, but to answer the second part of the question, I would say there's a lot of resources out there. There's the NFLPA and NFL alumni, which I'm very much a part of now. And I would say that like getting out, it wasn't like a big deal. So I didn't really seek out those resources. But now, like, as I've been gone from the game for a long time and I see all the stuff that they do have, I would say that there's quite a bit. Now, was there some when I was getting out? I don't know. But I probably wasn't paying attention to much of it. But now seeing it, there's a lot. So
Yeah.
to help guys transition.
Well, I watched this years ago, this expose 30 for 30 broke, which went into a great deal of the tragic underbelly of what happens when professional athletes leave their sport and leave their identity. And then ultimately, largely, I think, due to financial illiteracy, end up under severe financial duress, often bankrupt. I think it was quoted, this was back in 2009, but I think it was 78% of the former NFL players ended up filing bankruptcy. And I wanted to know more about the challenges that are faced. I also would love to dive in more after this question about, what it was like to go from taking off one uniform and putting on the business suit, right? One suit for another. But tell me more about what the challenges are like, because you mentioned that is a huge discrepancy, what your earning potential is here versus the 9 to 5 job that you then have to go into. So what are some of the challenges maybe you experience or those in your orbit leaving the game?
Yeah, well, I think first off, people have to realize that you can get caught up really quick in the amount of money that you make during the season, right? So the average guy playing, is only getting paid during the season. And so you have these massive checks, right? When I was playing, it was 16 games and now 18, I think, regular season, right? And so you have that divided out, this massive salary, right? Paid out in those weeks. And so it's like you get on this like, man, I just made a lot of money, biggest check I've ever seen in my life, right? And so you get on that and it's quick to continue to have this lifestyle, to live at that level. And I think when I was playing, there was certainly a lot of seminars and tools that you could utilize to really, to be smart about your money. And there certainly was there. But again, you're a kid, you're 24, 25 years old, and then you get handed a ton of money. It's, you can go spend a lot of money really quickly and get used to spending a whole lot of money in a short amount of time. So a lot of guys can fall into that trap. So I saw both sides of it, and I saw the guys that were very, very smart with their money too. So it's interesting. And I think, and I don't know what the stats are now. I really don't, but I'd be curious to know if it's gotten better. So.
Yeah. What about that? Yeah, the process of changing your identity, because I mean, you go from saying, I'm a professional athlete to what did you adopt as your new identity? How long did it take for you to put that different uniform on? What was it?
And again, I guess for me, like I had this notion like, hey, football was just a part of me, right? And so I think for me, it was just getting used to the new circumstances, right? The new situations, the new challenge and obstacles that you had to overcome. So as the identity, I guess for me, maybe it wasn't that much of a challenge. Because I knew it was part, and it's always still with me. Like, to me, it's like, hey, I'm still a professional athlete. Like, I still played football, I'm still an athlete, not near as in shape as I was, but so I think there's still part of that identity that stays with you, right? You are and were, and I think most people that played the game realize. And I was like telling this fun stat, like, you have a higher chance of getting in a plane crash than making it into the NFL. And to verify the numbers now, but it's crazy to think, right? Like, you made it to this elite level, right? And mine was a very short-lived experience too. I didn't play for about a year and a half, and then another 6-9 months in Italy. So for me, it wasn't a huge transition. It was still kind of a part of me, and I still identify as part of my life, my story, right? But the transition of like all this crazy eyes on you. I grew up in a family with two brothers, and we were like put on pedestals, everyone in our family, because we played sports. And, my younger brother's a pilot. So everyone kind of gravitated to watching, like, what are the boys doing? And then obviously you go into this sports arena where the same thing, everybody's watching you all the time. And so now you transition that into the business world, where it's not the case. Now, I certainly utilize that experience that I've had and transition that and try to glean off of those experiences into the business world. But yeah, the transition, I hope that answered your question. So.
Yeah, I think, okay, so I just wrote a newsletter recently where I talked about smoking, and that I used to love cigarettes, but I never identified as a smoker. And I think that served me well, because I could quit at any point. And at one point I decided, I'm done with this, gross, and it's expensive, right? But I feel like it was because I didn't marry myself to that identity. So similarly, yours is a much healthier pursuit than mine was, opposite side of the spectrum here. But you mentioned how you've brought some of those, the experiences and the skills into your new business world. I say new, you've been, post football 13 years or something now. What do you bring? What do you call upon even today? Because you've been in a sales seat now for over a decade. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, I think, well, one thing is flexibility. And that's why I just had this conversation with the principal owner of the company I work for now. And we talked about just the willingness to be flexible, to move, right? And in playing sports, you're going into the first half of the game with a certain plan, and then all of a sudden, you're getting your butt kicked, and coaches are like, "Hey, we got to change the plan." And so there's that innate flexibility that you got to have in playing sports, and going into different arenas, different environments. All these different variables and factors that play when you're playing a team sport. And so I took that with my career, right? I've done all kind of different stuff. I've been able to learn things really quickly. When I was playing in the NFL, I bounced around 4 or 5 different teams, and you got to learn the playbook. You get a big, huge playbook, and all of a sudden it's like, you got to go play. I remember transitioning, and it's like, all right, you switch, here's a playbook, and I'm playing within a week, so you got to learn all of that stuff really, really quickly and be able to adjust. And so that flexibility, or that ability to transition really quickly between organizations, or just tools or processes, those things allowed me to really transition in the business world to take on different industries, different roles. And in my current role, we've transitioned certain parts of our business where it's like, hey, we can't focus on this anymore. We got to move. Where some people can get really hung up on, man, this is how I have always done it. For me, it's like, hey, we got to keep growing. Let's keep moving, right? Let's adjust and pivot and go.
That's awesome.
I think that's probably one of the bigger things that I was able to take. Overcoming fear, obviously going into environments where, you're playing in front of 90,000 people, the pressure of playing, like those things. Like, for me, whenever I get into a situation where I got to make a big presentation, or I got to go do something I've never done before, I just go, man, I played football in front of 90,000 people. This is not hard. And so I have to like put myself in that perspective sometimes of, all right, let's put this in through a different lens and go, hey, what have I done? What have I achieved? And you know, this is just fear, right? And it's like, hey, I've done it. I've beat this fear before, and go out and do that. So
I love it. I think that's a really great reframe. I can't even imagine saying that. I've been in front of 90,000 people. That just gives me chills thinking about it. I would love to know too about the competitiveness. I mean,
well,
sales is often synonymous in some ways with, competitiveness.
right.
I have never felt that way, so I sort of feel like I'm like, I don't know, I'm like doing it wrong, but I am curious, did you take a competitive mindset in sports into business with you?
Oh, absolutely. And I think most people that play sports, they do have this innate competitiveness. They want to win. And at the end of the day, I mean, we have our scorecards for work, and it's just like, man, I want to win. I want to be successful, right? And so that's just ingrained in me. So, yes, that's a huge point that I mean, most athletes do take that on and get into sales because of that, because you have this arena to go win, right? Where someone's keeping score all the time, all right? And sales is one of those things that's like, hey, there's always a scorecard. There's always a number that people are trying to hit. So yeah, so that's probably the biggest, or one of the biggest components that you're able to kind of transition into the work world.
Yeah. Did you know that was what you wanted to do? I guess when you got out, did you have a plan of like, okay, I know based off of what I have done for the last few years that sales would be a really sort of organic transition, or did you sort of, fall into an opportunity? Tell me about like how you made the move into sales.
Yeah. So for me, I had three things I was going to do. I was going to start a business. I was going to work in marketing to get more involved with my hobby, which we haven't talked about, but my remote control airplane hobby. And I wanted to potentially start a hobby shop. And then third was get into sales. So I explored all three of those as soon as I transitioned out of football. Um, and that was around 2008, 2009 timeframe. And so obviously we hit this recession in the world, and I'm looking at, man, starting a business, that's going to be crazy. But my dad, growing up, we had a lawn service. My dad and mom put us three boys through private school all the way through high school. And so one of the things my dad did to just make extra money was start up a lawn service. And so we had a lawn service growing up. And I'll never forget, like, that was part of that work ethic, right? Because it was second, man, I think my older brother started in second grade, but third or fourth grade, we were out there. And it's just funny because I have a 2-year-old or a second grader now. And I'm just thinking, man, that'd be interesting to put her to work, right? Anyways, but yeah, my dad we had to go after school, cut grass, and then, after go to football practice, and then after football practice, go cut. I remember like cutting grass in my football pants, and so, but I look back and go, man, that was part of that work ethic, right? So anyways, I knew that business, which was kind of fun. And I'm like, you know what? I can start a business. I can get this going. So literally, boom, started a lawn service, got my feet wet in terms of being a business entrepreneur, which was pretty fun. And then at the same time, I started looking at different hobby shops to buy. And there was a couple different franchises out there that I looked at. And really for the amount of money that, the franchise fees, and all that stuff, I'm just like, recession. I don't know if I want to do that. And then I started interviewing some of the local hobby shops and really kind of better understood the market and kind of what was going on. And so, I guess, detoured after that one, or I felt a little bit like, man, this might be a lot more than I want to take on, especially in a recession. And so let me find a job. And so that's when I started looking at sales jobs. So kind of missed that whole part in the beginning, but that's part of how I got into sales. So I did explore all three of those options, and I continued to do entrepreneurship and look at different business opportunities as I progressed through my career in sales.
That's awesome. You mentioned remote control airplanes. So have
Yes,
you always had that as a love, even from when you were a little kid, like that you liked the mechanisms of these types of flying machines and being able to control them? And I guess my second question here is, do you think it's important that we all have a hobby?
absolutely. So um, first question, yes, I've always been a builder. My dad had remote control airplanes when we were growing up, so there's always something in the house. He always jokes around. He had my younger brother, and that was the end of his hobby because he didn't have any more money. So my dad was in a flight program. I think it was like a collegiate or something flight program at the end of Vietnam, and he was getting ready to go. So he was always interested in aviation, and then unfortunately that program got canceled and he wasn't able to do it. But his love for aviation always continued on, and he instilled that in me and my brothers. And so we always had, airplane books, and we're always looking at different stuff. And so aviation for me was a huge interest of mine and my brothers growing up. But because there's this huge, sports emphasis in my family, I kind of forgot about it through high school and then through college. And then not until really I got out of college, and I think it was the summer that I was getting ready to go into my first season in the NFL. And I was back home with my brothers, and we went to the local hobby shop, and we saw this airplane. We're like, man, we should buy this. And I'm like, yeah, let's do it. And so we bought it, and it was like, boom. And ever since then, I've been hooked on remote control airplanes. So, but I am a builder. I love building. I love, doing stuff as much as I can. We talked about the landscaping that I've done, building the deck on my house. Like if I could do it, I'm going to do it. So, now I might say one time is enough on some of it, but no, I love building. I love tinkering. I love using my art degree. It's about the only thing I use my art degree in now. I'm just kidding. I do marketing and sales, so there's a big marketing component that I still use, but I do a lot of painting with my hobby as well. So I absolutely love it. I'm hooked on it. I'm like a member of several different clubs. So it's anytime I get an opportunity to talk about it, I certainly will. Should everyone have a hobby? Absolutely. I think there's some studies out there that say that if you have a hobby, you're going to live longer, and I think you're more apt to help other people. And it's probably true because every time anyone wants to get into my hobby, I'm like the first one to give them all of the resources and the knowledge, etc. So. So it's been a big part of my life. My wife probably is sick of all my airplanes. My kids are to the point like, Dad, you don't need another airplane. So, but no, I love it, and it's been a fun journey.
That's awesome. And now you can just rub it in their face that you're going to live forever. So they should just shut up and let you buy another plane.
We certainly encourage hobbies in my household. So
that's awesome.
Do that. My wife has a great hobby too. So she refinishes furniture, and so we definitely have lots of projects going on.
Lots of longevity in that household. That's good. Well, two more questions for you today. What is something that you wish average Joes like me and diehard fans knew about professional athletes? What's something that you think people don't realize or don't understand because all they see is the shiny objects, right? Like on a TV. Well, most people do. I don't watch, but yeah. What do you wish people knew?
Well, I think people are getting, more in tune with the fact that if you do anything worthwhile in life and you become a standout, that there was a lot of work behind it all, right? As you know, developing the videos and starting the new journey, there's a ton of work that people don't see, right? And I think people are getting more accustomed to that, but they just see the end result. And I think that's the biggest thing with sports, the countless hours of work and dedication off the field that people don't see, right? And that translates to what your business world, right? If you want to be successful, you want to be a leader in the business world, there's a lot of hours, right? Lots of books read, lots of training, lots of conferences, all of those things that add up. And so I think people are getting to know that, but I think that's still a big thing that some people just, they're like, oh yeah, you're lucky, or, oh man, you've had a great life. Well, I've made it great, and people that are successful, they do that, right? It's a journey.
Yeah, that's a really great point. I'm very glad you brought that up. I think that we're rewarded. I think the expression is we're rewarded in public for what we practice in private. And people don't see all of the failures and the grit and the
Yes.
grime. And it can feel like, I think it's called an armchair quarterback where everybody sort
Mhm.
of, knows more than the person on the field. And I have certainly, since starting this business, had more advice put my way that I know what to do with, and often from people who've never been there. So I really appreciate you on both the business and for the athletes listening, like owners
Right.
or athletes or anybody starting out something. I think you're going to you're going to be fraught with a lot of attention in a good way and a bad way too, and also misunderstanding.
Absolutely. I just recently read the 10X by Grant Cardone, and yeah, it's the work ethic. It's putting the work in, right? That's what makes it 10X. It's going above and beyond all the time. Making it your duty to go out there and do the work. So yeah, so that's probably the biggest thing. I don't know if there's what else could I say that I want people to know.
I guess
Um,
I'm curious about like what about the like I don't know mental health or any of the physical ramifications? I think that's
yeah,
also gotten more attention, but I am curious, is there more that you could share too that maybe people aren't aware of or your own experience with that?
yeah, I mean, probably along the same lines, right? With injuries, there's a lot of stuff. I've certainly had my struggles, lots of injuries. Um, CTE is a real thing. This brain health. So it's interesting. I have a nephew that's playing high school football, and so it's just so different, right? And all of the precautions and what they've changed in the game is certainly different. But I mean, I've had issues with cognitive issues that I've noticed now, and uh, stuff that I have to overcome. Right? Obviously, physical ailments. I've got broken bones and scars and back injuries, and you name it. There's a lot of different stuff, but um, I think a lot of people know that with sports, right? And obviously, you're playing football, one of the most violent sports out there. You're going to have those injuries, and you're going to have to overcome. And it goes back to that whole thing of putting the work in. Had a recent conversation with a coworker that their son had just gotten a surgery for the shoulder, and I had to almost say close to the same surgery, and they were asking about the recovery, and it was like, man, that was a tough one. And it just kind of jolted my memory back to my freshman year in college where I had this surgery, and here you have this major delay in your progress of becoming a starter and playing and going through the entire experience, but just all of the extra work that you had to do just to get back, in time. And so yeah, it goes back to putting in the work, and really going above and beyond.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. I am I guess a third question tacked onto this one
Yeah.
here, but what about the money? Given you put your life, your body on the line and you face these ramifications for the rest of your life, do you think that, because maybe that's another misunderstanding is that people might feel like there's a disproportionate amount of money sent in the direction of these athletes, or maybe not. I'm just curious because I don't know much about the game, but I know there's a lot of earnings there. Do you think that there's a misconception with regards to the earnings behind the profession?
Well, I think for a long time there was, and now with the NIL and all this money that's basically being poured into some of these sports, I think people are realizing, hey, these athletes put their physical well being on the line, and so they should be rewarded for it. And so, I definitely feel that people are more cognizant of the pay there, and yeah, I mean, I look back and go, man, I missed the mark because all the money that they're making now, it's like, wow, it's unbelievable, the type of money. And don't get me wrong, I'm appreciative of the money that I did and I was able to make as a 25-year-old playing in the NFL. But at the same time, those numbers are just dwarfed even in today's standard. And guys that are, in high school and college that are making what I made in my first year in the NFL. So yeah, so I think people are starting to come to that and realize that, hey, yeah, these athletes definitely deserve being paid the kind of money. And then you look at the business of it, right? You also have to look at that too, because there's a massive business component of these organizations that are making, just tons of money. And, these athletes are putting in a lot of the work. They're the entertainment, right? So, yeah, I think that gap is definitely getting better there.
That's awesome. Well, my last question for you today, given that we're still early in 2024, what is top of mind for you this year?
Oh, top of mind. It's always a big thing for me to continue learning new stuff. But for me, I want to continue to win at my role as a sales and marketing leader. There's always challenges there and different things in the market that have that going up and down. It was fun, actually. This was probably one of our best weeks sales wise in all our companies that I'm a part of. And so it's kind of fun just to get some of those wins and see some of those things happen. So that's always fun. So just continue to focus on the sales and marketing, my role. And then also, I got to catch up to you on the YouTube stuff. So I've got one of my big goals this year is to get my YouTube channel going, which is all about remote control hobbies and RC airplanes. And so I definitely want to do that. I got a ton of content that just needs to get edited. So that's a big thing for me this year. And then I would say, business acquisition. So that's probably another big thing that I've been looking at. So through my role at my company and just personally wanting to learn more about business acquisition. So those are some of the big goals that I have for 24.
That's awesome. Well, maybe this will be the catalyst since you will be on YouTube here in just a couple of weeks on Cupalo Conversations. Maybe it'll kick it off. But I am so grateful, like I said at the beginning, for you, for your friendship, for all of your support as I've launched this business, as I've made this journey. We had the pleasure of working together many years ago, and I know we'll obviously stay, dear friends for life. And you've taught me a lot today about the sport and about that transition. I think it's amazing how you've reinvented yourself and continue to draw upon those early roots and that work ethic. So thank you again for everything, Brandon.
I appreciate it. Thank you. You've always been somebody that's like, man, I got to keep up with Lauren. She keeps on setting the bar, and it's awesome. And I love it that you're going out, you're branching off, doing your own thing, and starting new things. So I appreciate it because you inspire me to do more as well. So thank you
Awesome.
for having me. Appreciate it.